Stand by. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready to go live. We have L.A. Marzulli with us. There we go. I was able to hit the mute button. This is great, folks. I mean, talk about a legend. I just missed L.A. out there in Idaho, Smiths Ferry, Idaho, during the total solar eclipse. He has been researching the Nephilim and the elongated skulls for quite some time. Also, the alien watchers phenomenon. We're going to discuss Fatima, September 23rd, and we're going to incorporate the Nephilim as well. So real honor to speak with you, L.A. How the heck are you?
I'm good, Rex. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Your studio looks great. And folks, as you can see, that is actually a replica of one of those Nephilim. Could you kind of show that off real quick? Because last time you were on the show, we did Skype, and Skype has gremlins.
Yeah, Skype's got a lot of gremlins. It's you know, when we have to be cautious when we call it a Nephilim skull. We don't know what this is. We're in the process of doing extensive DNA testing. We've got 30 samples, which are cooking at 2 different labs, one here in the States, the other one in north of us in Canada. And, you know, it's been, our hypothesis has been that about 3,500 years ago, when Joshua and Caleb pressed into the promised land with the armies of Israel, these Nephilim tribes were there. The Nephilim, the Zanzimim, the Emim, the Anakim, the Raphaim, all different names, which may actually denote different genetic characteristics. I mean, the terrible ones, the long necks, that's the Anakim, long necks. So, you know, not all of them might have been giants. A lot of them were giants. And when I say giant, 9, 10, 12 feet tall, maybe taller. But the Anakim may have looked completely different than, let's say, what the Nephilim skull or the Nephilim giant might have looked like. See, we don't know. There's huge gaps in what the biblical record states and what we actually know. And part of the problem is at the turn of the 20th century, from the 19th to the 20th, the Smithsonian went out, and this is documented. Smithsonian went out, they sent out teams, and they gathered up all the giant skeletons all throughout America. Now, we've got a guy whose father, accordingly, and I have not met this man yet, so all this is still, you know, under the radar. But there was a story circulating the internet. It's been about for a year now. It's been on the internet talking about Smithsonian, you know, takes all these giant skeletons and bones and puts them on a barge and sails them out to the Atlantic and dumps it. Well, we found out something interesting. I have not spoken to the gentleman yet, and I'm waiting to communicate with this guy. His father allegedly was on the barge. Somebody's got to be on the barge. So his father was on the barge, and his father brought back about 600 artifacts over a period of time. Now, that's a great story. Great story. That's the only lead I have. Haven't seen the artifacts, haven't talked to this guy. There's no provenance. I don't know anything more than that. However, if it's true and he can document that his father did this and he's got pictures or whatever, it could be a real smoking gun. But we don't have that information yet, so we don't know. So the problem is with all these artifacts, the information that you think should be there is not there. So we are the only team that I'm aware of, and I really mean this. You can go online and you know, there's allegedly different studies on the Paracas skulls. These elongated skulls come from one particular place in Peru, Paracas, Peru, right on the west coast of Peru. It's about a 2-hour drive outside of Lima. And what's interesting about this, Rex, this is the only place where there's a concentrated burial ground. So when you go to the ICA Museum, and we'll be leading a tour there next year, and we will be going to the ICA Museum, and you look at the very long Chongo skull, which is all over the internet. When you look at that, you have to ask yourself, did someone cradle headboard that? Is it even possible to cradle board, to wrap a skull of an infant and somehow elongate it? And one of our archaeologists, Rick Woodward, the other one is Mondo Gonzalez, gave us a a very interesting study, which is in the new book. I'm going to bring this up to the camera so you guys can see this. This is the foramen magnum right here. This little thing right here. It's the foramen magnum. Now this is a mold, a one-to-one cast of what we're looking at. So Joe Taylor, this is the outside. This is, you can see these two nodules right here. That's actually the foramen magnum. What's filling this is clay, so you can put a dowel in it. But that's where the foramen magnum is. Notice it is to the rear of the skull, about as far back as you can get to the occipital plate. I mean, you can see it. Here's my finger, right? I mean, there it is. I mean, it's like right up against the rear of the plate, of the occipital plate. So that's, you can't do that. You can't do that with a human being. A normal human being, the foramen magnum would be thrust forward in the section here, so there would be balance. Our vertebra connects right about in here. So we've got a genetic anomaly, and I've shown this to medical doctors, chiropractors, and we're just getting more and more information. You can move the head, but you can't push that skull back up against the foramen magnum. You just can't do it. And what's interesting is that most of the skulls that we actually see in Paracas, the foramen magnum, that's where it's located. It's located all the way to the rear of the skull. And so we believe, and our one of our archaeologists, Rick Woodward, has written a paper, which we have not yet published. It'll be in the On the Trail of the Nephilim 1 and 2, all combined together, about 600 pages, along with the DNA evidence. Probably next year, this book's going to come out. It'll have oversized book, full color pictures. So it'll be expensive with all the DNA and all the new research and papers and everything else, very up to date. But what we've discovered is that the haplogroups, and the haplogroups come from the mother's side of the family, the mitochondrial DNA. This is where it comes from. And, 4 years ago, I knew nothing about this. I mean, I'm a neophyte. I am. I'm not a geneticist. But as a researcher, you learn. As a researcher, I jump in, both feet. And I bought books on DNA. I talked to researchers. I talked to lab people. We interviewed Stephen Frapietro, Rene Frapietro, the Canadian Paleo DNA lab in Canada. And that was in Watchers 10. So, I mean, I've boned up on it. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know the process that they use, and I understand that what we're after is the nuclear DNA, which comes from the paternal side. So far, all we've been able to get is the mitochondrial DNA from the mother's side. What's interesting is we've got a database which is growing. We've got a database that is growing and is showing a Middle Eastern / European origin of these skulls. Why is that important? Because it rewrites history. The Darwinists and the isolationists who hold that people don't move, they don't travel, things happen very slowly over a long period of time. And then there are the diffusionists, of which I am proudly one, who state nonsense. Cultures, men will get up in the morning and go, wow, I wonder what's on the other side of that hill. And off they go. Or, hey, let's build a boat and see how far this body of water is. Yeah, okay. Well, we've been out here 40 days and we haven't hit land yet. Thor Heyerdahl proved that you could build a papyrus boat, a reed boat, sail it out the Nile Delta into the Mediterranean, and the trade winds, without any map, any compass, anything else, the trade winds would blow your ship to Barbados, which is in the New World. So, I mean, it's not that far-fetched that when the diaspora happened 3,500 years ago, that these Nephilim tribes fled the area. Some settled in North America. And we've got evidence of giants all through the Americas. Native American tribes talk about this. 9, 10, 12 feet. Right here on Catalina Island in 1919, Ralph Glidden uncovered a 9-footer, several 9-footers. And we've got pictures of that. It's actually, it's one of the few pictures and I discovered it in the archives, but we also found 6 fingers, elongated skulls, all this. And they don't show those pictures to the people, and the archaeologists sweep it all under the rug. And I want to show you guys something here. Let me just get a book here real quick. I'll be right back.
Sure. And while you're grabbing that, I'll just jump in real quick to validate what you're saying. I've been researching the Sumerian tablets via Oxford translation, and there's been a multitude of tablets that talk about Nibru, not Nibiru, but Nibru. It's a city, basically an older city in Iraq, but it also talks about another location, which is in North America as well. So if you think that the Sumerians, the Anunnaki, and the Nephilim were one and of the same, there's a lot of discussion about how they actually manipulated DNA. They would take and, so Enki and Enlil, whether or not those were titles or specific people or people and titles after, it does talk about North America.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
So here's the picture that I discovered on Catalina Island. And there's Ralph Glidden, who's 5'8" tall. And in front of him, in situ, is a very large skeleton. So we took Ralph. I had 3 researchers work on this, and we took him out of the picture. And then, this is on a trail with Nephilim Volume 2. And then we took him out and straightened this guy up. And now you can see the disparity. It's just under 9 feet, 8 foot 9 inches. And that's what we're looking at. And you got to understand something, Rex, that when we published that in the book, and then I was on the History Channel in search of a lost giants. That's what the cover looks like. And I was on the in search of the History Channel in search of a lost giants. We went back to the museum, and they had taken the picture, cropped the giant out, and put it up on the wall. What was interesting is, and they wrote a hit piece on Ralph Glidden. He's a grave robber. We should all jump on his grave and, yell and curse at Ralph Glidden. Okay, I get it. But then I went on the record and blasted, what are these guys doing? Well, according to Chief Joseph Riverwind, who was back at the museum about 3 months ago, when he came back and said LA, they put the original picture up. So at least, why would they do this? Why would they take the picture and crop the giant out of the picture? What are they afraid of? Why, these people are supposed to be scientists, right? They're supposed to, science and archaeology, and we're going to find the truth. No, you're not. Anything that goes against your paradigm and your theory, you're going to bury. Or you're going to take those bones and put them on a barge and sail them out the Atlantic Ocean and dump them because you don't want to look at that. And that's, look, I'm a frank supernaturalist. I'm a born-again, spirit-filled Christian. And a lot of people on the other side of the aisle take umbrage with that. They take offense the fact that I believe in the supernatural, that I believe in God, the God of the Bible. I believe that Jesus was his son, that he died, on Calvary and rose again 3 days later. Whoa, stolen Marzulli quickly. He's actually voicing his religious opinion. Oh, we can't have that. We can have any other opinion on this planet except the born-again, spirit-filled Christian one. That's the one that's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you people? We can have everybody tell us about all this other nonsense. But the moment I voice my opinion and what I believe, somehow that gets censored. I'm not invited to, I was invited last year, but they didn't hold it. The Alien Con convention, they wanted me to come. Now this year, they pulled the invitation. So I'm not even on the roster. And I've done 3 in-your-face videos, one of them, The Watchmen Chronicles, specifically on the UFO phenomena. I've written about it for, since 1990. Are you kidding me? Are you flipping? And you know why they don't have me? Because I'm not lockstep with the party line. I have a different viewpoint, and I'll be presenting this weekend at the Branson Conference. I speak Saturday afternoon at Branson, the Gen 6 Steve Quayle deal. It's sold out. I'm not sure of this, but I think even the live streaming is completely sold out. Go figure. But I'm going to be talking about the extraterrestrial hypotheses versus the interdimensional hypotheses. And I had one person who watched our film, in their own words, UFOs Are Real, The Watchmen Chronicles. And she wrote and she said, it's the best UFO documentary I have ever seen. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But, shame on these guys on the other side of the aisle who won't invite me because I have a different paradigm. Oh, because he's religious. Oh, we can't have him do this. Seriously, it's unbelievable. Why? Because I believe in the supernatural world. You don't know where these people are from, these entities are from. No one does. And you're not, they can tell you anything. How do you know that? And the bottom line is this, Rex, and I've been saying this at all conferences, and I'll say it again in Branson. If we are intellectually honest, if we human beings are intellectually honest, no one on this planet has any idea. I'll say it again. And people, you really need, if you're listening to this, you need to really think about what I'm saying. No one has any idea where we are and what this is. Nobody does. You see, we're in the matrix. You wake up in the morning, you get a cup of coffee, you get a little something to eat, you put on your nice little hat, you go to your studio, you film someone like me, and yeah, this is really cool, right? This is reality. Not so fast, citizen. We don't know what reality really is. It's our reality for the present time, but you get into quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and I don't pretend to understand that stuff, and all of a sudden reality is like, wait a minute here. Let's say the universe as we know, the known universe is the size of the United States of America. And is Earth in relation to that? Are we in Milwaukee, Tampa, Los Angeles, Houston? No one knows. Nobody knows what this is and where we are and where it comes from. Nobody. And that should keep people up at night, because the Bible actually has answers to all of this. And it tells us, and this is chilling, that at some point in time, Father God will roll up the heavens like a scroll. Wait a minute. That's crazy. That's all bets are. Oh, it's just allegory. You're reading into this way too much. It's just allegory. Surely he's not going to do that. Oh, yes, he is. He's going to recreate the heavens and earth as we know them. That's nuts. That's crazy. That's beyond any Star Trek episode I've ever seen. And it is. And that's my point. We have no idea where we are and what, but when these entities come in with their disc-shaped craft and they move through walls and they make right-angle turns and they abduct people in the middle of the night, and they've done so for decades, by the way, for decades without ever showing themselves. And the reason why they don't show themselves is because they can't. They're being restrained, in my opinion. They're being deliberately held back until the time comes, and then they'll manifest in full. So that's my take on it. Was that your first question? Oops.
That's awesome, man. I love your energy. Thank you for that. And so I would like to know, let's say that I've read 2 different versions of the Book of Enoch. I've gone through the third one, but I've, cover to cover, there's 3 different versions of the Book of Enoch. And one of them describes Enoch as being just enormous. The size of Enoch, once he goes into Metatron status and becomes an angel, like the right hand of God, it's quite fascinating. But also when you read the Book of Enoch, the one that's in like the Dead Sea Scrolls or some of the canon versions that should be in the canon that aren't. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But the description and the size of the Nephilim, when the Watchers have sex with the Earth women, they're described as literally being huge. I mean, I'm talking massive, the size of buildings. And there's a couple different translations. So I know that you show some different images where they could be like 30 feet or 40 feet or something like that. And like you said earlier, organizations like the Smithsonian have taken all that history and hidden it. So how big do you think they actually get? How solid do you think the Book of Enoch is? And the description of Enoch actually kind of going into that heaven status. And then I want to get into Antarctica and any elongated skulls that have been discovered out there as well.
Sure. Well, regarding Enoch, there's no way to tell. I mean, I know Steve Quayle believes that they could have been 30 feet tall before the flood. And I concur. Who knows? There's no way to tell that. It's before the flood. We do see Cyclopean architecture, as Timothy Alberino would call it. I call it Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. When you go down to places like Ollantaytambo in Peru or Sacsayhuaman, what we see there is just artifacts which make absolutely no sense at all. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. This is a tower made out of basalt in a place called Silistani. It's round and it's conical, which means as it goes up, as you construct the tower going up, the radius is changing. It's one of the hardest structures you can build, because how do you know that that stone has to be shaped perfectly? And what we see from that picture, the stone is shaped perfectly. Hello. And
Hello.
yeah, I mean, you get into the Neolithic 3,000 years ago, and there's no way to make that. You can't cut basalt with copper chisels. I mean, the whole thing, it just collapses of its own weight. And yet these archaeologists and the docents who were there just mouth the party line. Oh, the Inca did it. The Inca did it. The Inca did it. Well, why don't we get a bunch of stonemasons together? The best stone, if I was a millionaire, a multimillionaire, this is how I would spend my money. I would take the L.A. Marzulli, Sacsayhuaman, Silestani challenge. I would gather the best and the brightest stonemasons from all over the world, 20 of them, bring them together, take them to the quarry. Here are your chisels, guys. Show me how you do this. Show me how you do this. And if they can do it, fine. Okay. But if they can't do it, see, if the chisels break, if they can't shape it, if they have no idea how to even transport the material, then we have a real problem. And see, that's what we do. We have a real problem because when you go to Sacsayhuaman and you look at these huge megalithic structures, Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology, and some of the stones there are, 100 tons or more. And the quarry is 40 miles away. I've been to the quarry. I've driven by it. It's a long, and it's downhill. So there are no beasts of burden in Peru before, pre-Columbian, before the horse comes with Columbus. How would the stones move? Guys with ropes and logs? Are you kidding me? Llamas? 20,000 llamas together? Are you kidding me? So, how was it done? And these guys, these tour guides drive me absolutely nuts because all they do is they spew the party line. Oh, the Incas were master builders. Oh, the Incas were this. Well, just show me. We see in these areas, let me get the other book and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
I wonder if the Arada people that were talked about by the Sumerians previous to them, the master builders, if they were one and of the same as maybe the Nephilim or the some of these giants that you talk about. What do you think about that, L.A.?
Well,
if you heard me, I know you're in the book.
I think that's exactly what we're looking at. That what we're seeing is that this is global. Whoop, this is global, and people. Is that good? Do I have it in the same place? Okay, look at this. Let me see if I can find you a good one. Like in Sacsayhuaman, yeah, here we go. In Sacsayhuaman, you get this type of megalithic architecture. Okay, and in and I was just there with Steve Quayle, which was really fun, by the way. And then you get what I affectionately call the Inca slop. And I'll show you that in just a second.
Okay.
Right here. This is a perfect example of different. Can you see that? It's on this page.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do this. And I'll bring it up. Okay. Right here is the Cyclopean Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. Above it is what I call the Inca slop. This stone is andesite. The stone above it has been put in by the Inca, and above that is the colonial, when the Spanish get there. You've got three different types of architecture, three different types of building. And what's pristine is look at the joint. Look at the joint right there. Hello. I mean, you can't, you look at that. When you stand there, and we were just there, when you're in Sacsayhuaman or Ollantaytambo or Machu Picchu, and you look at these places, and you look at the pristine stonework, the best in the world, and I just sit there and marvel. This is beyond anything we can do in modernity right now, present day. Good luck. Oh yeah, and we got cranes and lasers and diamond saws and all this other stuff. Show me, just show me, guys. But no, we don't have millionaires who are trying to make this happen. Show me how you quarry the andesite stone from 40 miles away. Show me how you bring it into the site. Show me how you shape it without mortar and make the cuts absolutely pristine all the way through the rock. Come on. And, hats off to Brian Forrester, who was our guide the very first time we went down there. And, Brian and I agree on a lot of this stuff. It certainly is an Inca. We maybe disagree as to the origin of it. I don't know what Brian believes, but I believe it's Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. That, to me, in my paradigm, my worldview, that seems to have the answer.
So being like fallen angel technologies, do these fallen angels you feel come from like another dimension or maybe another planet or both?
It can be either or, or it's right, both and, not either or, both and. There could have been, they could have colonized, let's say, Mars. I mean, look, here's my proof text. God gets a bunch of angels together, all right? And he goes, and then Satan shows up. How does that work, right? And Father God goes, where have you been? And Satan goes, walking to and fro over the face of the earth. Wait a minute. What do you mean walking to and fro over the face of the earth? So was Mars inhabited before the flood? We don't know. Was Mars inhabited before the recreation of Earth? You see, this is what I'm talking about. We have this, many of us have this very truncated view of the supernatural and very truncated view of the ongoing cosmic heavenly war, which has been raging on in another dimension for who knows how long. Now, we know the God of this world is Satan. We know that. And we know at some point in time he's going to be deposed. That's when, Yeshua, Jesus, comes riding in with the armies of heaven on the white horse. Every eye will see him. I can't wait for that moment. And then the 1,000-year literal millennial reign where he rules from Jerusalem with a rod of iron, by the way. He's not, let me put it this way. There's not going to be any porno houses in Los Angeles anymore. There's not going to be any abortion mills in China anymore. That's not going to be here during the millennial reign. It's not. We're not going to have, rumors of war and nations like Kim Jong-un. It's not, launching ICBMs. It's not going to happen. That's what the rod of iron is. All that, this crazy, insane world. I mean, look at the stupid movie that's out this weekend. It. The guy, the maniacal clown, the maniacal clown. This is how diseased we are. When a sick movie like this can break all sorts of box office records. Oh my gosh, it's disgusting. Disgusting. And if you're a Christian and you go see that, you got to have your head examined because it's right from the pit of hell, in my opinion. With all due respect to Mr. Stephen King, it's right from the pit of hell. I remember I saw The Shining before I was a Christian, and I walked out of the theater 4 times. I get up, walk out, come back. And I was arguing with myself. It's just a movie. It's just a movie. Why are you so freaked out? Just go in and sit down and watch it. No, I don't want to watch it. This argument, and I'm not a Christian at the time. That movie was so demonically inspired, so twisted, so evil in every scope. And it still haunts me if I'm in a hotel room, or walking down a hotel corridor, are the twins going to pop up? I mean, that's the type of stuff that people don't get. When we take it in, we take it in. And it's there. We're accountable. You take something in, it's in. And that's why I wash my head, my mind constantly with worship songs, constantly, just like, when I'm working, obviously I can only focus on one thing. Like now, I can't be singing a worship song and talk to you at the same time. I just can't do that. But I know, how great the Father's love. I love that song. It's a fairly new worship song. And that the last verse, I hope I can get it right. Why should I gain from his reward? I do not have an answer. But this I know from deep within my heart, his wounds have healed. No, his wounds have paid my ransom. But this I know from deep within my heart, his wounds have paid my ransom. Talking about Jesus on the cross. I mean, if I'm in a church setting and they're singing that, I get to the last verse, I start bawling like a baby. And it's not because I'm emotional. It's because it's visceral. It's because I know what a depraved bozo I am without him. And we all are. And that's why the redemption is so incredible. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I mean, that's the mystery of the gospel. That's the miracle of the gospel. When we give our lives to him and we accept him as Savior, admit our sins to him, he comes into our life. The Spirit of the living God comes in. We are born again. That connection with the real God of the universe is made. And all of a sudden, everything changes. Everything changes and continues to change. So being born from above is what your audience, if they don't know what I'm talking about, that's what you want to explore. That's the key to life. That's the key to everything.
You know, once again, your energy is awesome. And I can tell that you really feel strong about what you're talking about. And that's what I love about people like you, LA, is talking to you, even though I don't agree maybe with some of the religious aspects. I do feel that, you know, there is a divine source, and whether it's Jesus or another name or whatever, I can definitely feel it. And if I go into a church sometimes, like the last time I went into a church, or one of the last times, I don't know if it was the last time, but I felt this energy that was so powerful. Like my whole body was just, you know, like the hair was standing up. It was electric. It was amazing. It was fascinating. Thinking about it, it feels great. I guess it's kind of one of those things that if we, like you said, a rod of iron, and if you feel this 1,000-year reign, which it definitely could happen. I definitely see the possibilities. Do you think that it's going to be like a cleansing and a purging of sorts before that happens? I mean, like Fatima, for example. Let's jump into Fatima. What does that actually mean? What is the secrets of Fatima and that prophecy? You just did a really good book or a documentary on this, didn't you?
It's a film. It's called Fatima, Miracle of a Son, or Harbinger of Deception. I'll bring it up so your folks can check it out. But, you know, that's what it is. It's a little over an hour long. My wife and I traveled to Fatima, Portugal, and we interviewed scholars, historians, philosophers, and neuroscientists, just a bevy of people, researchers. And I boned up on it, of course, and I've been a student of Fatima for well over a decade. And even a decade ago, in my book, Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural, I wrote about Fatima. And that I said right there, you know, Miracle of the Son or Harbinger of Deception. And basically, what people don't know, and let me deconstruct it, or let me say this before I even get there, that people have a right to believe whatever they want to believe, okay? I'm not here to disparage anyone's belief system. I'm not. If people that are listening to the show want to believe that Mary appeared to the children, that's their prerogative. You can believe what you want to believe. And that's why when we got to Fatima, we took Mary off the table. We're not even dealing with that in the film. We won't deal with that in the film. We're not gonna, at least in number one, we never brought up what was this apparition to the children. What did the children really see? The first thing we have to understand is Fatima, Portugal, 1917. There are no airplanes in Portugal. No airplanes in Portugal. Where the children are located who see this apparition is extremely rural. There's a dirt road, stone houses. Most people are illiterate. They can't read or write. They go to church and they hear the biblical stories. That's their foundation for their worldview. Priests are literate, doctors are, lawyers are, but the populace is not. 3 children who are shepherds, 10, 9, and 7. These are small children. Small children who don't know anything. They're illiterate. They're out in the field, and this is all 1917, but what most people don't understand is before 1917, 1915, they are seeing something, apparition over the landscape. A fourth witness who came out years later talked about seeing a blonde-haired boy or girl, wasn't sure what sex it was, long blonde hair. That's not Portugal. You can't have that in Portugal. That doesn't exist in Portugal. And it communicated with the foreseer telepathically. So and what people don't understand either is that Portugal is steeped in goddess worship. Before the Christian era, there was goddess worship. Mora was the goddess, this female goddess who was actually more like a modern day succubus. She would lure men into her area to have sex with them and then kill them. So isn't that fun? And the priests of these ancient temples were all castrated. This all comes from Syria, Phoenicia, this whole deal. So it's even before the Temple of Diana, which Greco-Roman type thing coming in before that. And these sites are all over Portugal. And they remain there. I mean, so the Christian era comes in, but it just sort of sits itself on top of the pre-existing, culture, which has been there for thousands of years. So the children see something. There's an entity that appears to the three children on May 13th, 1917. Lucia, and this is something that we realize, in order to understand what's going on, we researchers must draw from the 1917 documents. 1917, 1919. Those are the documents that we draw from, not 21, 24, 30, 31, 40. No, can't do that. You can't do that because as the years progress, the story is managed. And I'll tell you why in just a second. The three children are out there and they see something. Lucia never mentions Russia, never mentions consecrating Russia to the Sacred Heart of Mary. You know when she wrote that? 1928. And when she was 16, she was 10 in 1917, okay? So now add 6 years, so 1923, when she's 16, she's hustled off to a convent, given a vow of silence, not allowed to see anybody. That's all, it's all on the public record. And then in 1928, 1931, that's when the secrets emerge. There are no secrets in 1917. It's not there. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. And yet people will say this over and over and over again. So we go back to the 1917 documents. Something is going on there. Something is appearing in the children. There's no doubt about that. Again, going back to the original documents, when Lucia is asked, where did the lady say she was from? Lucia says, from the sky. Well, what does that mean? Not from heaven, from the sky. So it's very, very strange. And when you go back to the 1917 documents, which we've done, and you look at what's there, it's a completely different story than what happens much later. Completely different. And from May 13th to October 13th, this entity, and I'm not going to call her Our Lady because I don't believe it was the Mary of the Bible, with all due respect to those who do. In my opinion, and I'm entitled to it, I believe that it was not the Mary of the Bible, who I, venerate and think she's an amazing human being, but not worthy of worship. End of story. So from May 13th, 1917 to October 13th, this apparition appears to the children at Fatima. And the crowds begin to grow. By September, there are upwards of 30, 40,000 people. And they are asking, the children are asked in September to go and ask this lady for a sign. So this entity says, yes, I will give you a sign on October 13th. So the following month comes October 13th, 1917. There are a cross-section of humanity, upwards of 70,000 people standing in a field. It has been raining all day, all night. People are drenched to the bone. There are doctors, lawyers, farmers, bakers, newspapermen. There are cameramen who are there, but these are not the cameras that we have today. These are the old wooden box cameras where you put a glass plate in. And so there are pictures of that day, but not many, because you have to wait until you're under the hood, you put the glass plate in, you got to wait until the thing develops and you take the plate out. I mean, it's a whole deal. So that there are pictures, and some of it absolutely interesting. What we have from the eyewitness testimonies is that it was raining all day. And suddenly the clouds broke away and the sun appeared. And then in front of the sun, another cloud came out of nowhere slowly and covered the sun. And out of this cloud came a dull silver disc that spun like this on its axis and then went back up. And it did it 3 times before it did what we call a flyby. And this disc-shaped object came over the crowd less than 100 feet over their heads. It's not the sun. The sun did not move from its place in our solar system and come down to Earth. The sun is the size of a watermelon. The Earth, in comparison, is the size of a head of a match. You can't do it. If the sun moved from its place in the solar system, there would be no Earth. Everybody would be incinerated. It was not the sun. And it's a misnomer. This reporter from one of the newspapers in Lisbon called it the miracle of the sun. And it stuck. But it wasn't the sun. It wasn't the sun as we know it. It was something in front of the sun which emerged from the cloud. And Wesley Sangiorgi, who does all of our computer-generated imagery, did a wonderful job in bringing this to light. When we show the flyby, there are phenomena that happen as this craft passes over the people. Clothes are dry, skin burns, windshields explode, the hoods of cars pop up, motors burst into flames. All that is part of a narrative that people don't know about. Yes, there are also healings, but we see the same thing happening in ufology. So that's Fatima. And, this is volume 1. We're actually in the process of editing volume 2. There may be a volume 3. I don't know. It just depends on how well this does and if people are curious. But what we discovered there in antiquity, thousands of years before the Christian era, serpent cults, cults to the goddess Mura, who demanded all sorts of sacrifice. I mean, it's just wacky stuff. And these principalities, in my opinion, have never been deposed. They're still ruling the region. So all this has been twisted around, and it's Mary of the Bible. And we're just saying, with all due respect to Catholics and those who believe that, somehow Mary appeared there, we're saying, take another look. Look at the actual evidence. Go back to the 1917 documents, which is what we have, and you will see that Lucia never, ever mentions any secrets, never mentions Russia. All that's concocted. And there's a Catholic website that I use to promote, to actually use as a proof text. And they have the whole timeline, and they state that the secrets came out in 1928 and 1931, from Lucia's hand, when she's told to write them down. So it's years later that the so-called secrets, manifest.
Let's talk about that for a minute if we can. The secrets that were manifested as Russia, etc. Do you think that it was the Russians, the Soviet Union, that was involved in that? I mean,
No.
Why would there? What's the point?
I'll go out on a limb and tell you what I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Lucia is hustled away by the Jesuits. What most people don't know is the Jesuits were disbanded and reformed and castigated by the Vatican numerous times because of their Machiavellian machinations, because of the way they do business. Dan Brown in his novel pointed back to the Jesuits. The current Pope is a Jesuit. The Inquisition was led by the Jesuits. The rape of the New World was, and you could make a case, spearheaded by the Jesuits. Lucia is hustled away, given a gag order by the Jesuits. The communist starts in 1917, and the church loses a lot of its power. Certainly in Russia, right? Lost a lot of its power in Russia and all through Europe as the communists came in, and even in Portugal, was the First Republic. This is the era of the First Republic right here. So it's very political. It's a very complex issue. The fact that the consecration of Russia to Mary's Sacred Heart, in my opinion, and I'm entitled to it, 100% fabrication, completely contrived.
Albert Pike, I'm sure you've heard of Albert Pike.
Sure, Freemason.
He wrote a letter, and there's a couple different versions. I've read some of his stuff out of that 700 and something page book, Rituals and Dogma, or something like that. But according to this one letter, he talks about 3 world wars. But I think that the Third World War was added later for a book with the research that I did. He did a letter on the two world wars, the first and the second, but not the third. So my question to you is, do you think that maybe the Jesuits or some secret organization is attempting to create a following, to kind of like a magical ritual, kind of like Hollywood uses movies? Well, maybe since they didn't have movies back then, they were using books. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, this is the problem. This is the disparity that we have between the supernatural experience of being born again and spirit filled and the machinations, the Machiavellian machinations of the so-called sections of the so-called clergy. And I take umbrage with this. I take great offense in this, because it's not the same God that I'm worshiping. Sorry, it's not. That's not what he's about. This is something else. It's all about control. It's about amassing wealth and control. And when you look at Mexico, for instance, and I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but Mexico is predominantly a Catholic country, and the people are kept down. And what most people don't understand is, when you look at the Mexican Constitution, who really controls Mexico is the Vatican. That's who controls Mexico. Nothing changes. The people are kept down, but there's a cathedral in every city. Oh yeah, we got to have that. And people go and they pay and they pay and they pay. And it's a system. And it's a very corrupt system, in my opinion, with all due respect. Extremely corrupt. All we need to do is look at the pedophile priests, which ongoing, non-ending, countless victims. And, is it going on today? You bet. Of course it is. Just recently, the gay homosexual party in Rome at a higher up in the Vatican hierarchy. I mean, come on. I mean, look, Protestant, you can bag on the Protestants too. Well, excess of raising funds for their own aggrandizement. Yeah, there's plenty of guilt to go around, but it's problematic in my opinion. Very problematic in my opinion. Look, I'm a frank supernaturalist, and had I been standing in that field, I would have immediately rebuked whatever was going on. I would have challenged that thing immediately. That's what we're trained to do. I would have rebuked it. I would say, the Lord rebuke you now. If it's not from the Father, I ask that you would, cease, let this thing cease, let it stop. Because we have the power and the authority to do that. No one did that. There were priests that were there, and we're actually looking into this. One was Father Fiera, who vanishes after 1917, falls off the map, falls off the radar. No one knows what happened to this guy. But he was convinced that it was not something good, that it was demonic, and that it was a deception. And that's what I think it was. But of course, he's painted now as the bad guy, and we're stuck with that.
Another thing that I wonder too, Elliot, you are literally probably the foremost expert in, I don't necessarily want to say the Nephilim, like you just said, because they could be a multitude of species, but the elongated skulls. I mean, you've got several, and you've seen many around the world. You're friends with Steve Quell. You talk to him a lot. He has a lot of information on Antarctica. Do you think that let's look at some of the Egyptian pharaohs. They had the elongated skulls, right? And I want to share a story with you. I brought this up before as well. I know somebody that has been a lifetime abductee. And so has her mom, so is her kids, so is her grandma, her grandpa. I mean, Rh negative blood. Her mom showed me a picture once where she woke up and she had 5 fingers and a thumb, so 6 fingers. She woke up, she had some weird, it's just crazy stuff. I mean, they've had helicopters flying around that you can't hear and just bizarre stuff like that. So definitely something's going on. Whether or not, I don't know, something's there. But maybe these things can kind of like go in and out of form. Maybe they can come in and out of physical form into something else. Like spiritual form or something? I don't know.
Well, again, we know from the guidebook of the supernatural that these entities have the ability to come in and manipulate space, time, and matter and energy in ways that defy our physics. I mean, we know that. I mean, that's proven all throughout the guidebook of the supernatural. It's all there. These entities, the good guys come in, they do things which defy our physics, and then they leave. So that's why I tenaciously hold to the interdimensional hypotheses about what these entities really are. And they have the ability to appear as whatever they want to appear as. The Greek word, and I learned this from my friend Russ Dizdar, is metaschizmatisai. Metaschizmatisai. What that means is these entities can appear as whatever they want to appear as. Male, female, doesn't matter. They can assume any shape, and you'll look at it and you'll see it. That's what we're up against here. And by the way, they're highly intelligent, much more intelligent than we are, and they are masters of deception, absolute masters of deception.
With the time that we have left, maybe we could talk about September 23rd, the Revelation 12, and I want to give a huge shout out to the film crew that's putting together The Sign. I don't think you met them, or maybe you talked to them for a minute, but they also are doing a really good documentary on some of the prophecies and maybe Revelation 12 and the connections to the sign, the signs in the heaven. If you look at the stellarium, you can see the planets, the way that they line up and stuff in connection with Revelation. Whether or not something really big happens, or the World War III starts or whatever, I definitely see something on the horizon. And the weather that we've been seeing, I think, is painting a picture of what's to come. What do you think is going to happen on September 23rd, and just your gut feeling, et cetera? And maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
I don't think anything will happen on the 23rd. I was on Coast to Coast recently, and George Norrie kept pressing that question. And I just said, George, I don't think anything's going to happen. I think that, with all due respect to those who are tenaciously holding on to this and pinning it as the day of departure, the day of the rapture, the harpazo, the taking away, the snatching away, I think that can happen at any time. So the 23rd, while it's interesting, there's something going on with the signs. There's no doubt about that. But I've also talked to an astronomer who also has the Solarium software. And it's not every 7,000 years. This is actually a very common occurrence that we're seeing. So, and he talks about the stars which make up the 12. It depends which stars you want to use, because the actual constellation of Leo has like a lot more stars than 12 to begin with. So it's complex. I just don't think that we're going to see anything on the 23rd. That being said, I will say this, that the signs that we're told to look at are ramping up like crazy. We are told wars and rumors of wars, check. Earthquakes in diverse places, 8.1, 8.2 in Mexico. Now LA is like, everybody's going like, wow. Los Angeles next could be the Cascadia fault line, the Yellowstone massive super volcano, the two volcanoes that the Houston one, and now Irma, down in Florida. I mean, these are unprecedented events. Some are saying the worst hurricanes we've ever seen, and it's not over yet. Kim Jong-un threatening an EMP, which would bomb us back to the Stone Age. Then you've got the whole deep state. You've got the tension in Europe. People say, what happened in 2015? Unprecedented. Europe let over 1 million Muslim, mostly men, come into Europe, and they've changed the cultural climate, the cultural landscape of that entire continent. And now we see exactly what's going on in Sweden, in Germany, in Poland, in Denmark. People are going, we don't want any more of these so-called refugees. Look at the Middle East, the bloody civil war, which has been going on for, well over 6 years now in Syria. The body count's through the roof. Look at the saber rattling that Iran does constantly against Israel every Friday. So, I mean, the world is right there. And it's ramping up. These are the days of chaos. I wrote a book a couple of years back called Days of Chaos, and I haven't backed up at all. What people don't, from that position, what people need to understand is that these are the birth pains which give birth to, the tribulation period, that 7-year period. So could we get beamed up out of here on the 23rd? Yeah, we could, but we could get beamed up on the 19th or the 26th too. We don't know. So what I do is I live in the tension. What I mean by that is I know the prophecies, I look at the signs, and I see what's going on. I'm not building bomb shelters, because I don't believe in doing that. I have stockpiled food and water. I have a very vigorous garden, all that. That's just smart preparation because we live in a very uncertain time. Anything can happen. When the fire hit here in 1985 and burned the entire canyon, no electricity for 2 weeks. What do you do? See what I mean? So I'm prepared. Having lived through that, I'm prepared. I have a root cellar. I've got 6 months worth of provisions. I've got a vigorous garden. I've got a water supply. I've got a Berkey water filter. So, I'm ready for something. But I live in the tension of knowing that and then celebrating, wow, we went to Portugal. That was amazing. Or, wow, we're going to the Branson conference and I get to yak in front of 3,000 people. Or, hey, I get to go to the Prophecy Watchers conference on October 13th and speak there about Fatima. I can't wait for that. And in December, we're going to take most of the month off because we haven't had a vacation, I don't know when, and kind of chill a little bit because we deserve it and we need it. We need just time to just chill out. So I live in the tension of keeping my eye on the prophetic pulse, keeping my hands on the prophetic pulse, keeping my eye on the prophetic landscape. But I'm also planning for my ski trip this week or, this year because I'm an avid skier at 67. That's my favorite thing to do. And I can't wait. I can't wait. The snow season is almost upon us, my friend. So, I live in tension and that's good. Embrace the tension.
That's awesome. It's funny because I was actually looking at condos. I've got this membership where I can stay in condos sometimes for like dirt cheap. I found a condo in Snowbird for $200 for the week.
Wow.
Not bad, right? Not bad.
I'm your new best friend.
Yeah. Hello. I'll let you use it, man. It's pretty cool. It's easy to just log on. But LA, you are awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on this show.
Well, thanks, Rex. Appreciate it.
Will you real quick just give a shout out to your websites? It's lamarzulli.net. And then you've also got lamarzulli.wordpress.com.
And if you're interested at all in picking up the Fatima book or the Fatima DVD, we're selling them now. We got them last Friday. We're shipping them. So it's $19.99 and it keeps the lights on, keeps us researching. TheWatchmanChronicles.com, TheWatchmanChronicles.com.
Right on. Thank you so much. And also you've got some great books as well. So folks, check those out. There's a lot of great illustrations, lamarzulli.net, and be the change you want to see.